Hey, welcome to Crossroads, folks. The jury is still deliberating on whether or not Trump is guilty in the New York case. We're still waiting for answers on it. But as this happens, something else is going on, which is that not only Trump now, but even Biden, they seem to be using this trial as a way to campaign. Something Biden said he wouldn't do, by the way. Now, look, both Trump and Biden are pushing their issues on this. And after Biden, right, here's what happened with Biden. They sent a delegation with Robert De Niro to go and speak in front of the courtroom. They got criticized pretty heavily by Trump for this. But what came out from this is an interesting discussion that Biden's suggesting that all the attention of the entire world, and the United States in particular, is on Donald Trump with this whole thing. Now, the White House defended the move, suggesting the trial highlights the stakes in the upcoming election. And meanwhile, Donald Trump is holding his stance that the trials are politically motivated. Let me show you first what Biden was doing. Politico had this. They said after 6 weeks of staying clear of the courthouse at 100 Center Street, Joe Biden's campaign on Tuesday showed up to hold their own event, a dramatic reversal of the president's strategy in the final days of Donald Trump's trial. Interestingly, in one of the issues Trump raised, they did this after the final statements were given and when the jury began deliberations. And the timing of that, right when the jury begins considering things, raised some questions over whether, well, was that meant to influence the jury? That was one of the big criticisms of this. Politico notes that much like the Trump has done through parts of the trial, Biden's campaign team brought their own set of surrogates to parade before the mob on television cameras that have camped outside the courtroom each day to hear from Trump's allies. It notes that asked by a reporter why the president's re-election campaign decided to hold an event at Trump's trial, his communications director, Biden's, had a simple answer, quote, "Because you are all here," meaning the media, of course. And he said, quote, "You've been incessantly covering this day in and day out." And of course added, right, they wanted to highlight the stakes of the election. Now, briefly on that, I would note that Trump isn't using this because he wants to be there. The whole argument that, that dang Trump talking to the media before he goes into court every day and taking all the attention away. I doubt Trump really wants to be sitting in a courtroom right now, frankly. And the idea that, he's stealing thunder from Biden by, getting all the attention of the media because he's standing trial and that's somehow on him is a bit of a strange argument, at least in my opinion. But Biden, of course, is capitalizing on this, and they're suggesting now that, hey, all the media is here, all the attention is here. They wanted to bring their people out and get them in front of that media and capitalize on that intention for their own campaign. And now Politico notes further in that more so than any other day in the trial, fueled by the Biden campaign's involvement, the courthouse and its immediate vicinity on Tuesday became a center of litigation for something besides the hush money trial, the November election. Notes that the Biden campaign decided over the weekend to authorize a guerrilla-style campaign event near the courthouse in an effort to break through the nonstop cable news barrage of the Trump trial, according to two people, it says, familiar with their plans, granted, who spoke on anonymity. Now, again, the odd thing with this narrative is they're painting it like Trump's doing this intentionally. I really doubt Trump intended to be indicted. I really doubt Trump intended to be stuck in New York. I really doubt Trump intended to have the judge say that he had to show up in court every day, that it couldn't just be his lawyers. And I really doubt that he's, not liking not being able to be on the campaign trail. But of course, that's the way it seems to be framed by some of these outlets, that somehow, Trump is stealing all the attention by going on trial. And, on Biden's side, of course, it says something interesting, which is really, I think, good to point out. It's an interesting reason for them to hold an event there. They claim the trial is taking away attention from Biden and the election, that all the eyes of the country are on Donald Trump because of the trial. Now, this could actually suggest that they think the trials and the constant attention on Trump are actually helping Trump's campaign. Because look, if your enemy's making a mistake, don't interrupt them, right? That's how the old saying goes. Don't interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake, right? It's classical military strategy. And so if Trump being on trial is harming him as a candidate, let him do it, right? Normal campaign strategy. The idea that they had to insert themselves into that on the narrative, again, that Trump's getting too much attention from it, suggests that they believe that Trump may actually be benefiting from the trials. It suggests that maybe they believe that maybe even a guilty verdict will not have the result they believe it would have originally. And look, meanwhile, as for Trump, let me show you what he had to say on Wednesday morning. Watch this.
I would say, in listening to the charges from the judge, who's, as you know, very conflicted and corrupt, because of the confliction, very, very corrupt. Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. The whole country's a mess between the borders and fake elections, and you have a trial like this where the judge is so conflicted he can't breathe. He's got to do his job, and it's not for me, that I can tell you. It's a disgrace, and I mean that. Mother Teresa could not beat those charges, but we'll see. We'll see how we do.
Look, Trump isn't pulling punches in the case itself, regardless of the gag order. Remember, the judge in the case has held Trump in contempt like 10 times now. Trump keeps violating the gag order. Trump said 3 words to the judge recently. The judge called him out on it. Trump looks through his wallet, and the judge says he doesn't have to pay right then. And Trump says he wants to see if he has enough money for another few words. He's ignoring this. Trump, in his, I think in his right, frankly, is calling out the issues he sees with the trial. He's not letting them silence him. He's not going quiet. He's constantly calling out the issues he sees with it, the issues that he believes this is politically motivated. And his idea, frankly, that this is not just about him. He's saying this is a problem in the legal system itself. This is an example of the problems we face with political corruption, problems we're facing in the country. And of course, it's supporting his campaign narrative. Trump is campaigning on this narrative. He's suggesting there are fundamental problems in the country that need to be fixed. And so the interesting thing with these trials and the way it's worked out for him is he's been able to connect, of course, the campaign narrative to the trials themselves. Now, even aside from that, he's been tying the legal attacks into, of course, the broader problems in the country. An example of this problem is, for example, this, right? On the case itself, regardless of the outcome, we're probably going to be hearing even more about this going forward. I really think this is going to be bringing out issues not only with Trump, frankly, but issues with the court systems, issues with woke DAs, issues with, for example, people being very light on crime in some ways and being very harsh towards others, and people wondering why that is. This is the beginning, I think, of a very large debate in the country, not the end of it. Now, I'll be going more into all this, though, after a quick break.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Hey, welcome back. Now, the jury is still deliberating on former President Donald Trump in the New York case and whether or not he's guilty. But look, regardless of the outcome, no matter how things go, whether they find him innocent or guilty, whatever else, we're probably going to be hearing even more about all of this going forward. This is very far from the end of it. Now, Republican members of Congress, they've also been noting some of the issues with the case and with the judge in particular, and even some issues possibly of maybe special interest and even maybe some financial payments. Again, we could see this whole thing flip, and let me show you. First of all, here's Senator Marco Rubio. He said this on X. He said, judge in Trump case in New York City just told jury they don't have to agree unanimously on which crime was committed as long as they all at least pick one. And then among the crimes that they can pick from are the ones Trump wasn't even charged with. He says this is exactly the kind of sham trial used against political opponents of the regime in the old Soviet Union, right? How can you find somebody guilty on a charge that was never established, right? Is that how our court systems work? Is that how the American justice system works? I don't think it's ever been that way, frankly. And so they're noting these things. Now, even more so than this, something else is happening. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, she's also now officially filed a misconduct complaint around the Trump trial, and she's raising questions over why Justice Merchan seems to keep getting assigned to cases around Trump. Something not normal, by the way. Why is it that every time they have a MAGA or Trump-related case come up, for some weird reason, Justice Merchan keeps getting selected for it? The chances of that happening in the normal kind of lottery system where judges are assigned to cases is almost impossible, frankly. And they're noting this now, and they're wondering, well, how does that keep happening? Now, this is what she wrote on X, and I'll show you the document in a sec. She said, just filed an official misconduct complaint with the New York State Unified Court System related to the quote-unquote random assignment of acting Manhattan Justice Juan Merchan, a Biden donor whose daughter is fundraising millions off his unprecedented work to criminal cases against President Donald J. Trump, his companies, and his allies, suggesting again that she believes there may be a financial element to this. Now, here's what she had to say in particular. Let me show you the actual letter she wrote. She said, members of the Commission and Madam Inspector General, I am writing to alert you to potential misconduct by justices and employees of the Supreme Court, criminal term, New York County. It says, she said the potential misconduct pertains to the repeated assignment of acting Justice Juan Merchan, a Democrat Party donor, to criminal cases related to President Donald J. Trump and his allies. She notes that acting Justice Merchan currently presides over the criminal case against President Trump brought by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Acting Justice Merchan also presided over the criminal trial against the Trump Organization and will be presiding over the criminal trial of Steve Bannon, a senior advisor in President Trump's White House and a prominent advocate of Trump, notably. She notes that, again, for President Trump, right? She notes that the website for the Supreme Court criminal term, New York County, does not provide a comprehensive list of every justice and acting justice sitting in the courthouse. But based on the courtroom directory, there are at least 24 sitting justices on the court. 24 of them, folks. And she notes that acting Justice Merchan is not even listed among them. She notes that one assumes because of his status as an acting justice. Section 211C of the Uniform Rules for New York State Trial Courts requires that criminal actions be assigned to a judge, quote, pursuant to a method of random selection selection authorized by the chief administrator. And what are the chances of him getting selected randomly over and over again for these particular types of cases? Now, she notes that if justices were indeed being randomly assigned to the criminal term, the probability of 2 specific criminal cases being assigned to the same justice is quite low. And the probability of 3 specific criminal cases being assigned to the same justice is infinitesimally small. And yet, we see acting Justice Merchan on all 3 cases. This is the same acting Justice Merchan who in violation of New York State Code of Judicial Conduct 105H, she says, donated to President Biden's 2020 campaign along with the Progressive Turnout Project and its Stop Republican subsidiary. It's also the same acting justice whose daughter, she says, is a political consultant working for prominent Democrats, whose firm stands to profit greatly if Donald Trump is convicted. one cannot help but suspect that the random selection at work in the assignment of acting Justice Merchan, a Democrat Party donor to these cases involving prominent Republicans, is in fact not random at all. She said the simple answer to why acting Justice Merchan has been assigned to these cases would seem to be that whoever made the assignment intentionally selected acting Justice Merchan to handle them to increase the chance that Donald Trump, the Trump Organization, and Steve Bannon would ultimately be convicted. Now, the important part here, aside from pointing this out, she says this. She says she requests that both the Commissioner and the Inspector General investigate this anomaly to determine whether the required random selection process was in fact followed in the assignment of these criminal cases to acting Justice Merchan. If acting Justice Merchan or any other justices of the court are found to have violated these rules, she says that she would hope that the commission would subject them to the required discipline. And if any non-judicial employee of the court are involved in such a scheme, she said she would hope that the Inspector General subject them to the appropriate sanction. She says, "Thank you for your attention to this matter. Sincerely, Elise Stefanik." Now look, it's an accusation. A lot of people are pointing out the possible conflicts of interest the judge may have because of his daughter and because of his donations. I would say in normal cases, you would watch a judge recuse themselves if their family members have direct interest in a case that they're overseeing, or if they have some, basically demonstrated inherent bias that could affect the way that they hear the case. The problem is it's usually on the justices themselves to choose whether or not to recuse themselves. And he can say, well, I'm not going to recuse myself because, my donations will not affect my judgment. I would say look at the behavior of the judge, look at how he's treating Trump, look at how he's going after him. Do you think that he is acting in a way that demonstrates total non-bias against Trump? You tell me. Now look, remember Trump, realistically, he's facing up to 20 years in prison. Long story short of it, again, it was 2 misdemeanors. They were just bookkeeping charges. They were past the statute of limitations. They took those, latched them on to the idea that Trump, by doing this NDA, had, mislabeled, of course, this NDA, hush money, as being a legal case, as being, legal expenses. But they're saying it was not a legal expense because they're claiming this was meant to influence the elections, that it was a campaign expense, not a legal expense. And so they took those 2 misdemeanors, elevated them to 34 felonies. I should note, and people have been pointing this out as well, that when the Clinton campaign and the Democratic Party created the PP dossier, the one they accused Trump of, hiring hookers to pee on Obama's bed in Russia and all this weird stuff like that, right? It was fake. They faked it, right? But they hired a former British spy who then went through unverified Russian sources to create what was essentially Russian disinformation. They then circulated that within the intelligence agencies, within the media, within the government. And they used that to launch investigations into Trump, to spy on the Trump campaign, to undermine his campaign, undermine his presidency, and even try to remove him from office, including using taxpayer dollars to have a special counsel appointed to investigate Trump based on that, which undermined his entire presidency. Now that whole thing, which in my opinion should have been a crime in itself, they labeled that as a campaign, as a legal expense. Some of the payments for that were listed as legal expenses, not campaign expenses, even though by their own admission, it was just, it was opposition research. It was stuff meant for the campaign. Why was that allowed? But Trump, of course, using an NDA to pay this woman off, who knows whether it was legit or not, right? Pay this woman off and just say, hey, quit giving me trouble. They do that, of course, and they listed it as a legal expense, and that for some reason is 34 felonies. You tell me. Now, people have noted that Trump could face, if you add all the charges up, it's like 120-something years in prison maximum. Realistically, in New York, the most they could give him is about 20 years. But look, that's still a life sentence for Trump. That would still be, he's old. That would be the rest of his life in prison. That's a life sentence for Donald Trump. Now, he will very likely appeal, though. And again, in the appeals process, I think he has a good shot at winning because, frankly, there are serious examples of conflict of interest. There are serious examples of some of the core problems with the case. I'll be explaining these, by the way. And of course, there are issues that, frankly, I don't think would normally stand in a court, which have been allowed to stand. They didn't even clearly define the laws, the foundational laws that were broken, frankly. Now, again, all of this, regardless of anything, will be brought up in appeal. And some commentators are saying the Supreme Court, interestingly, could even have a fast-track way of taking up that appeal. I'll be talking about that, though, and also the other issues with the case, because there's a lot to it, exclusively on EpochTV.com, as well as how some of the left-leaning news outlets are reporting there's growing concerns within the Biden 2024 campaign. All of this, though, exclusively on EpochTV.com. So if you're joining in on YouTube, Facebook, X, or Rumble, or wherever else, come join us and get news reported the way it should be, with honesty and integrity. Not only do we here at the Epoch Times cover topics that matter most to Americans, we go all out, frankly. We have special features, documentaries, premium reports. We cover stories pretty comprehensively, I think, as you've seen. So if you want access to news you can trust, click the link below and you'll be on your way. Let me show you the trailer of my new documentary, Weapons of Mass Migration, where again, I investigated what's really behind the border crisis. You can watch Weapons of Mass Migration exclusively on EpochTV.com. Link in the description. We'll be back after the trailer.
An unrelenting stream of immigration. Non-stop.
According to statistics, around 7.2 million illegal immigrants entered the United States under President Joe Biden alone. They have United Nations facilities here, and the people pushing this are leading people to their deaths.
To what extent is the United Nations facilitating the border crisis?
They're throwing rocks!
They're being overridden by international powers.
We are not authorized to talk.
It is a humanitarian business now.
And they said, oh yeah, these are the debit cards. We're giving these debit cards to the immigrants.
Why all the cloak and dagger? Why are we being so stealthy about this?
And some of these people have gone on record and publicly talked about this. People close to Barack Obama.
It puts 12 million people on the path to citizenship and eventually voters.
I've been researching, of course, what's happening, but I want to know why it's happening.
We'll see chaos on a global scale until America is extinguished and the power shifts completely to the east.